Hey everyone, Robert from Morphs here. As promised, today's video is going to be about how to help undersized or small baby ball pythons. And the snake I'm going to be showing you is the one snake that we produced that was a standalone on all itself. This right here is Miracle. I've shown you in prior videos that he was, well, I don't know exactly what gender they are right now because they were too small to get sexed when I did the other ones from Clutch 1. But as you can see, he is still, well, they are. I'm trying to really work hard with pronouns and everything until it's determined what they are gender-wise. But they were born about a week or two after the first clutch, and they came from a single egg clutch. The egg itself was not entirely calcified at one point. There was a large open window. Well, not open, but a very clear window. It was about the size of I think about a 50-cent piece. If there's any of those old enough to remember how big those are. But yeah, but there was still a viable vein system and an embryo in there. Now, because it was only one egg, it had plenty of room and space to be put into a tub for an incubator, and it made it the entire time, even though the uncalcified spot was becoming harder and slightly moldy. But every time I checked on it, I was making sure to wipe away the mold. From what I've been told, that eggs that come out with large uncalcified windows, there's more than likely a possibility that you're going to get a compromised snake, either deformed or undersized. I definitely got undersized because when I initially weighed them, they were in the low 40s to high 30s in gram weight, whereas all the snakes from Clutch 1 were in their 70s or 80 grams weight. Initially, it did take them a very long time to get on food because as they were also underdeveloped, they also did not absorb a lot of their yolk. So again, it took them a very long time to get on feed, especially after the first shed. But when they did finally take a meal, it was just an issue of them not so much eating, but holding and maintaining on to the weight. Because as the other snakes grew, they, Miracle, only maintained a size that was not much bigger than my pinky finger is around or wide. And despite numerous feedings of live and maybe a couple attempts at frozen thawed, which only one time worked, but because I did not see them eat it, it goes as an unconfirmed frozen thawed feeding. Now, we did have a couple of issues early on in December where we had a couple of power blackouts, and that caused everything to shut off, even the thermostats, heat tape, all of that. And it got a little bit cold in the house as we tried to find ways to keep things warm. And every time that happened, it definitely affected the snake room entirely. But regardless, most of the snakes in Clutch 1 kept feeding. Miracle, on the other hand, stopped eating for the entirety of the month of December last year. And at that point, I was very worried that they would succumb to death or some sort of other issue. And I tried hard as I could to do assist feedings. Now, for those of you that don't know what an assist feeding is, it's basically where you take a smaller meal, frozen thawed or pre-killed, and you try to get it into the mouth of the snake, and you try to push it in far enough to where it engages their teeth, and let instinct take over, and they start trying to eat it. This actually failed a couple of times. I ended up spitting it back out. And then it ended up getting to a point where I was getting really frustrated, and I started asking advice from people on Facebook groups for snakes, other breeders. One of the hardest bits of advice was basically, hey, sorry your snake's going through this because it's probably compromised, probably got some issues you don't know or can't see at the moment. It's probably best to euthanize it. Save your effort for the other snakes that you do have. As a beginner, that was kind of a hard pill to swallow because Miracle is the one and only snake that has been produced by my now retired female Phantasma of the Phantom Morph. And it's been my goal to hold Miracle back and grow them up. I'm not quite sure if I ever want to use them as a breeder because of the circumstances of their mother having a couple instances of retaining eggs. So if they're a female, I'm worried about that trait or that possibility being an issue later on. Or if it's a male, whether or not it's going to be, virile or not. But after a couple attempts, uh, they got themselves back on food just as soon as I tried to do feedings after the new year. And here lately, they have been taking on much bigger mice, anywhere between a medium, a little bit way bigger than a hopper, but definitely medium, almost to a point where they can take a large mouse. Now that they've had a couple of sheds and a couple of growths, and obviously a couple of clear movements, although you can see some spotty traces of like a urate on the substrates here. I've actually pulled out a couple of decent sized chunks of poop. Other than that, when you're dealing with snakes that could be problem eaters or they might be behind on the growth scales and everything, it's all about having some patience and a little bit of determination, because sooner or later they will get back on and they will eat and they'll gain weight, even though it might take them longer to catch up to any other snake you might have that you've raised up. But I guess the point I'm getting at is just don't give up until it's almost official. Like if you take them to an exotic vet and through their determinations, for their diagnostics and all that stuff, if they determine that the animal is not going to thrive, it's probably best to have them euthanized. But if you can try really hard, despite all the negatives that could possibly happen, you can get these little guys to thrive and survive and continue to grow. They may be a little bit behind, but it's well worth the effort. And honestly, I'm glad that they are eating. I mean, at this point, they're still eating live under supervised and controlled conditions, because I will get their attention with the scent and the heat signature of the mouse, and I will hold the mouse by its tail. That way, it can't run around freely. And until they get a full grip and wrap around it, I will still monitor their feedings just to make sure that the animal properly expires and that Miracle eats promptly. That's my standing policy whenever I ever do feeding, especially if they're live. I never, ever, ever leave the room, and I always maintain contact with the said prey item while it's engaged with the snake and wrapped around. I always do checks to make sure that nothing is ever getting bit. I know some of you will probably say, well, maybe you should try frozen thawed. Well, it's getting harder and harder for me to get frozen thawed in smaller sizes, because other than ordering from Rodent Pro, I do have local sources, but my local sources are having issues with supply and demand. So they can only get what they can get. So I have to shop around and look a lot and try to use what I have to use. But at least I'm being responsible about it. But uh, one other thing, if you're trying to assist feed and you can't get them to use the shove a pinky or a fuzzy down its mouth and get it down there, the next option would be try to use a pinky pump, but that would only be something I would advise to be used by a veterinarian technician who's got some experience. Because if you buy some run-of-the-mill pinky pump, a lot of times the pumps themselves are just poorly made, and when you try to use them, the flask breaks, or worst case scenario, you could over actuate the pumping mechanism and it could cause a blowout. I talked to a breeder and pet store owner that deals with snakes, and he said he tried it once with a pump, ended up blowing a hole out the side of the snake's neck, and it took forever for the snake to heal and then get it back on food. So if you're thinking about trying to do pinky pops, think first before you even try it on your own. Always try to get a vet to do it, to help you. Because if something goes wrong, it could probably mean the difference between having a live snake that might be able to eat or a snake that's going to end up having to have surgery to repair a blown hole either around its neck or even worse, anywhere in its GI tract. Well, I hope I've been informative and that you guys have learned something about this. All I can say is never give up on your snakes, despite what anybody else might tell you. Always seek medical guidance first before you try doing anything else on your own. This is Robert from Mice Morphs, wishing you best of luck, keeping your babies alive, and seeing them come up into the future. Have a good day.